The young man was lying in bed in pain, with stitches all over his thigh. He was hit by doctors with a drill through the tibia to cut the tendons, and then ripped back 220 stitches. This young man is called Robert Pacquiao. He was only 17 years old. He was just about to transfer to the professional team Fiorentina to get $1 million a year, but ended up with a serious injury to his right leg in the last game. Almost half of his leg was ruined. This cast a huge shadow over his future. Today's movie is based on the real-life experience of the legendary Robert Pacquiao. He is one of the greatest soccer players in the world. He had eyes like the deep blue of the Mediterranean Sea. But almost all fans around the world call him the Prince of Melancholy, because Pacquiao's story is a sorrowful saga. After surgery, Baggio reported to the professional team Fiorentina. As promised, but on crutches, he could only watch his teammates train from afar. Even when he played, he had to take a break every few minutes, because he didn't play for the team. Pacquiao was even embarrassed to receive a salary from his boss. Discouraged, he wandered the streets. The enthusiastic record store owner did not find an Eagles album for him, but was nervous to pull out a Buddhist scripture and take him to practice with him. Robert Pacquiao became one of the few people in Italy who did not believe in the Virgin Mary but in the Buddha. He later wrote a book recalling that it was the Buddha who saved his soul. To appease Pacquiao, his girlfriend Andrina also decided to come from her hometown to accompany him. This woman was a high school friend of Pacquiao's, and they had never been apart since they met at the age of 14. She later gave birth to 3 children for Pacquiao. As time went on, Baggio struggled to regain the strength in his right leg, despite the pain of each flexion and extension, but he stayed on the pitch longer and longer. Historically, Pacquiao played 94 games for Fiorentina, scoring 39 goals. The hearts of Fiorentina fans belonged to Pacquiao until the arrival of the victorious Batistuta. But in the 1994 World Cup in the United States, Pacquiao suffered the darkest moment of his life. Roberto Baggio had just won the World Footballer of the Year. He was now the main player of the Italian national team. But in the 1994 World Cup in the United States, they lost their first match 0-1 to the underdogs Ireland. Head coach Sacchai was disappointed. He angrily blamed the players for not playing according to his tactics. But Baggio raised his left hand and asked him a question.
Ma con un tocco io come faccio a saltare l'uomo?
The air froze for a few seconds before he and Pacquiao bonded. Sacchi decided to find a chance to make a fool of Pacquiao. The second match with Norway, the Italian goalkeeper was red-carded midway through the game. They were playing with one man less. The fans in front of the TVs are screaming their heads off. The grandfather in the nursing home had a blood pressure rise. Head coach Sacchai had to take off a striker and replace him with a new goalkeeper. The fourth official on the sidelines raises his number. Saggi replaced the Italian number 1 player, Roberto Baggio. He is a little surprised and then runs off the field reluctantly. The Italian fans rise to salute their prince. Sacchi's decision turned the nursing home grandfather into a low blood pressure instantly. In the knockout stage, they will face the African Eagles, Nigeria. A loss would send them home. Against a strong opponent, the Italians were shoveled into a series of defeats. Nizhnia scored a goal first, and Italian striker Sara was also red-carded. With only 3 minutes left in the match, it was a death sentence for Italy. Everyone was desperate, but this man's universe was still burning. He caught a pass from a teammate and Baggio put it into the net to equalize the score 1-1. The game then went into extra time and Baggio won a penalty for the Italians. He stood in front of the ball in his classic penalty position, ran and hit the top left corner. The ball is in. The great Italian number 10. They are through to the last 8. In the next game against Spain, Baggio took a long pass and ran west, dribbling past the goalkeeper to score one of the greatest goals ever scored in the World Cup, helping Italy to win 2-1. They entered the semi-finals of the World Cup, where they will face Bulgaria with the famous Stojcikov. Baggio scored 2 goals in the opening 26 minutes to finally lead his team to the World Cup final. But late in the game he strained his thigh and sat on the grass in pain. This is the 1994 World Cup final. The Rose Stadium is hot and steamy. Italy will play against Brazil. Baggio, whose leg is not healed, looks at Romario of Brazil. The camera switches back and forth between their faces, between reality and fiction. It was a match between 2 of the best players in the world at the time, but the game was a bit dull. Neither side made any significant progress in 120 minutes, and it was dragged into the first 4 rounds of penalty shootouts. Italy's Barisi and Massaro kicked away the penalties. When Brazil's captain Denga scored, Baggio was the last player to play for Italy. They still have a chance. If they don't score, Italy will lose the World Cup final. Will he be a hero or a sinner? He takes a few steps back in front of the ball, runs, the ball flies out, and Italy loses the World Cup final. Baggio stood in front of the goal. The world's fans were moved by the back of the man who did not want to leave for a long time. The Brazilian team was celebrating wildly on one side, and the Italians were in pain on the other. Pacquiao standing on the ground. Some people say that after 1994, Roberto Baggio's eyes were still as blue as the Mediterranean Sea, but from then on they were sad. For the World Cup in France 4 years later, Pacquiao gave up the opportunity to play abroad with a high salary and stayed in Italy. But in 1998, Roberto Martini did not give him the trust. He preferred to let the younger Del Piero waste his chances on the field rather than give Pacquiao more playing time. In 2001, Pacquiao wanted to play for Italy for the last time at the 2002 World Cup in Japan and Korea. Once again, he gave up the chance to play abroad and stayed with a small Serie A club called Parecchia. At the age of 33, Pacquiao scored 21 lead goals in 37 games, an excellent performance. But the manager Trapattoni cheated Pacquiao and promised to take him there. But in the end Pacquiao was not selected for the national team. All the Italians felt unjust for him. Many years ago, a Fiorentina fan threw a Fiorentina scarf at Pacquiao, who was already a Juventus player. At the Franchi Stadium, Pacquiao almost instinctively raised the scarf. He said it was the voice of his heart. Such an act offended many Juve fans. Pacquiao has never regretted it. He says he is a player, but above all he is a man of feeling. King Pelé once said that Salachi was a phenomenon, but Pacquiao had the potential to be the king of the ball. In the end, Pacquiao did not become a real king, but he became the eternal prince of the Italians.